The sea was black and cold, its waves breaking silently against the hull of a warship cutting through the Baltic night. 1,000 tons of steel glided forward, radar dishes sweeping the horizon, sonar pulses reaching into the depths below. On the deck of the USS Bulkeley, sailors stood watch under the glow of red battle lights, their breath misting in the freezing air. The destroyer's engines thrummed with steady power, a heartbeat in the darkness. This was no routine patrol. The mission had a name whispered in NATO briefings: Baltic Sentry. Beneath the waters, unseen and fragile, lay lifelines that connected nations. Pipelines carrying fuel, cables carrying data, grids transmitting electricity. Invisible arteries of modern civilization, and all of them vulnerable. A single act of sabotage could cripple economies, silence communications, or plunge entire regions into chaos. After the Nord Stream explosions shattered the myth of safety under the sea, the West no longer viewed the Baltic as just a trade route. It had become a battlefield, quiet and hidden, where divers, drones, and submarines could decide the fate of nations. Now, for the first time, the United States had sent a destroyer to guard those lifelines. A message in steel that the era of ignoring the deep was over. But every deployment sends another message too, one heard clearly in Moscow. Russia's submarines prowl these waters, their crews trained to vanish beneath thermoclines and ice, capable of slipping close to cables with tools built for cutting. Intelligence reports already warned of Russian research ships, mapping the seabed with uncanny precision. To them, the arrival of the USS Bulkeley was not protection. It was provocation. And so, the stage was set. A destroyer moving through narrow seas, its sensors scanning for shadows in the depths, while Russian vessels moved silently in return. A standoff without gunfire, but every bit as dangerous as open combat. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Because this story does not belong to the Baltic alone. It belongs to the whole world. Drop your country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next headline could be about the spark that turns these quiet waters into a battlefield. The destroyer pressed on through the night, its crew alert, its weapons armed, its sonar searching. Somewhere beneath the waves, answers waited. But so did threats. And the question echoing through every cabin was the same. Was this mission truly about defense? Or was it the first step toward a war no one was ready to admit had already begun? The Baltic Sea looks calm on the surface. Narrow straits, busy shipping lanes, fishing boats tracing their routes as they have for centuries. But beneath those waves lies one of the most complex and vulnerable networks of infrastructure on the planet. Thousands of miles of fiber optic cables carry the internet that connects Europe to the world. High-voltage power lines transmit electricity between nations, balancing entire grids. Pipelines snake across the seabed, moving oil and gas that heat homes, power factories, and fill the engines of armies. Every one of those lifelines is invisible, silent, and defenseless. They cannot be armored. They cannot be shielded. A diver with the right tools, a submarine with a few charges, or even a drone slipping unnoticed through the depths could sever them in minutes. And if they fall, the modern world begins to unravel. The lesson was made brutally clear when explosions ripped through the Nord Stream pipelines. In a matter of hours, billions of dollars of infrastructure were reduced to twisted steel lying useless on the seabed. The mystery of who carried out the sabotage only deepened the fear. If one set of pipelines could be destroyed without warning, what else was at risk? NATO's intelligence agencies warned that undersea infrastructure had become the new front line of hybrid warfare. Not missiles, not tanks, but cables cut in silence, leaving nations blind, powerless, and fractured. In a conflict where energy is weaponized, the seabed became a battlefield more dangerous than the skies above. That is why the USS Bulkeley now moves through these waters. Its sonar ears tuned for the faintest trace of a submarine, its helicopters ready to drop sonar buoys, its crew scanning for the shadow of any vessel loitering where no vessel should be. The mission is protection, but it is also deterrence, a signal that the US will not allow the arteries of Europe to be cut without consequence. Yet the presence of a warship changes the balance. For Russia, whose submarines have long prowled these seas, the message is clear. NATO is not just watching, it is preparing. And in crowded waters like the Baltic, where borders overlap and the seabed is carved with secrets, preparation can look like provocation. The Baltic, once seen as a backwater of global strategy, has become a pressure point where invisible infrastructure could trigger visible war. Every cable humming with electricity, every pipeline carrying energy, every sonar ping searching the depths, all of it has become part of a silent standoff that the world barely sees, but cannot afford to ignore. The USS Bulkeley is no ordinary warship. She belongs to the Arleigh Burke class, the backbone of the U.S. Navy, vessels built not just to patrol, but to fight and survive in the deadliest waters on Earth. At nearly 9,000 tons, she cuts a sharp silhouette against the horizon, sleek, powerful, bristling with sensors and weapons hidden behind her steel skin. At the heart of the ship is the Aegis Combat System, a command and control brain that can track hundreds of targets at once. From enemy submarines gliding below the surface to fighters streaking through the skies, Aegis fuses the ship's radars, sonars, and weapons into a single web of awareness. Sailors call it the ship's nervous system, a machine that reacts faster than any human could. Her arsenal is formidable. Vertical launch cells line her decks, each one a sealed hatch that can open at a moment's notice to unleash Tomahawk cruise missiles, surface-to-air interceptors, or even anti-submarine rockets. Close-in weapon systems, Gatling cannons with barrels spinning at thousands of rounds per minute, stand ready to shred incoming drones or missiles. On the aft deck, an MH-60 Seahawk helicopter waits, armed with torpedoes and dipping sonar, able to hunt submarines far beyond the ship's horizon. Inside, the crew lives in a rhythm of constant readiness. Sonar operators sit in dark rooms, headphones pressed tight, listening for the faint click of a Russian submarine. Radar operators scan green-lit screens where blips move across like ghosts. Weapons crews drill relentlessly, practicing for the moment an order comes that could change the course of a confrontation. Every sailor knows that in the confined waters of the Baltic, the line between exercise and combat could vanish in seconds. To NATO, the Bulkeley is a shield, a guardian of undersea infrastructure, a visible reminder that the United States will not stand aside while Europe's arteries are threatened. But the ship is more than defensive. Her missiles can strike land targets hundreds of miles away. Her helicopters can chase submarines into hiding. Her guns can sink vessels that dare to test her resolve. She is both protector and predator, capable of holding back an attack or unleashing one if provoked. For Moscow, her presence is unmistakable. Russian admirals see the destroyer's silhouette and read it as a warning. The United States is not just watching the Baltic, it is anchoring itself here, ready to act. And to Russian submarine commanders prowling the depths, every sonar ping from the Bulkeley is a reminder that their silence may not last forever. What do you think? Is this deployment truly about defense, a shield for Europe's lifelines, or is it the first step in preparing for direct confrontation with Russia? As the Bulkeley cuts through the cold waves, her bow throwing white spray into the air, her presence transforms the Baltic from a sea of trade into a sea of tension. And every mile she sails forward pushes the question further into the open. Is she protecting peace or standing at the threshold of war? Beneath the dark surface of the Baltic, Russian submarines prowl like hunters. Their movements are silent, their presence rarely confirmed, but NATO's sonar operators know they are there. The black hole submarines, diesel-electric boats designed to vanish into the depths, are a particular nightmare. When they shut down their engines and drift, they become almost undetectable, waiting like predators for prey to pass overhead. For Moscow, the Baltic is more than a sea. It is a corridor to Europe's heart, a narrow body of water bordered by NATO on nearly every shore. The Kremlin has watched the growing alliance presence with fury. Finland and Sweden, joining NATO, turned what was once a contested space into something close to a NATO lake. Now, every Russian submarine that slips beneath the waves sails through a gauntlet of radars, sonars, and patrols. And yet, they keep coming. Intelligence reports describe Russian research vessels mapping the seabed, their routes suspiciously close to power cables and communication lines. Western analysts believe these missions are not about science, but about reconnaissance, identifying weak points, cataloging targets for the day when sabotage might turn the tide of war without a single missile fired. Moscow's warnings are sharp and deliberate. Russian officials call the presence of the USS Bulkeley provocative, accusing Washington of preparing the Baltic for escalation. State media runs endless footage of submarines diving, missiles launching, warships sailing. The message is clear: if NATO pushes too far, Russia will respond. But in the Baltic, where waters are shallow, crowded, and filled with sensors, the risk of accident looms larger than the threat of open battle. A submarine surfacing in the wrong place, a destroyer mistaking a sonar contact, a fighter jet flying too close. All it would take is one spark. And in these waters, there is no room for error. Sailors aboard the Bulkeley know this. Every sonar ping they send could echo back with a contact that might be friend or foe. Every radar sweep might catch the shadow of a Russian jet flying too close to the edge of international airspace. The crew drills constantly, practicing for scenarios where seconds separate caution from catastrophe. And this is the reality of the Baltic standoff. It is not about who fires first in anger, but who blinks last in tension. A game of nerves waged not only with weapons, but with shadows, signals, and silence. Some analysts warn it is only a matter of time before something goes wrong. A submarine collides with a cable, a destroyer misinterprets a maneuver, a pilot locks radar on the wrong target. When nations face each other this closely, mistakes can be as deadly as intentions. The USS Bulkeley continues its patrol, her sonar ears reaching deep, her crew alert. Somewhere beneath her hull, Russian submarines glide in silence. Both sides know the stakes. Both sides understand that a single wrong move could turn the Baltic Sea into the flashpoint of a new global crisis. The Baltic Sea has become more than a regional waterway. It is now a chessboard where the future of NATO and Russia collides. Once, Moscow held a stronger position here, with bases in Kaliningrad bristling with missiles and warships. But the balance shifted dramatically when Finland joined NATO, stretching the alliance's border with Russia by over 1,000 kilometers. Sweden soon followed, giving NATO complete control of nearly every Baltic shoreline. What was once a contested arena is now surrounded, and Russia feels the noose tightening. In response, the Kremlin has poured resources into Kaliningrad, turning the small enclave into a fortress. Long-range missiles capable of striking ships at sea stand on alert. Submarine pens hide beneath reinforced structures, ready to unleash stealthy hunters at a moment's notice. Air defenses ring the coastline, creating bubbles of danger for NATO aircraft. Yet, despite this, the Baltic is no longer Russia's domain. NATO's presence grows with every month. Frigates from Germany, submarines from Norway, aircraft from Britain, and now an American destroyer patrolling its center. But this standoff is about more than ships and borders. It is about the hidden lifelines beneath the water. Fiber optic cables that carry Europe's internet, power lines that keep cities lit, and pipelines that heat millions of homes have become targets in a new kind of warfare. The Nord Stream explosions proved how easy it is to strike and how impossible it is to prevent. NATO leaders fear the next attack may not just be about energy. It could be about severing Europe's digital arteries, cutting off communication, isolating countries at the worst possible moment. That is why the USS Bulkeley sails now, not simply to protect, but to send a signal. America is here, and if these lifelines are touched again, the response will not be hidden. It will be loud, visible, and global. Yet the danger of escalation grows with each patrol. Russian commanders view every NATO warship as a challenge, every sonar ping as an intrusion. The more crowded the sea becomes, the higher the risk of a misstep. A Russian submarine brushing too close to a NATO cable. A NATO drone passing too near a Russian base. A warship locking radar on the wrong target. Any of these could ignite a chain reaction neither side can fully control. Analysts call it a shadow war, one fought not with missiles, but with divers, drones, and disinformation. A war where cables cut in silence may matter more than battles fought in daylight. But even in shadow wars, deterrence depends on steel, and the USS Bulkeley is steel in motion. And so the question rises, if undersea lifelines are attacked again, should NATO and the US strike back directly, even at the risk of open war? Or is restraint the only way to keep the Baltic from igniting into something far larger? The destroyer cuts on through the mist, her radars spinning, her sonar probing the depths. Around her, allies patrol, and in the distance, adversaries lurk. The Baltic is quiet for now, but everyone on board knows the truth. Silence is not peace. It is the pause before the next move. The fog hung low over the Baltic, wrapping the destroyer in silence. From her decks, only the glow of radar screens and the steady hum of engines marked her presence. Beneath the waves, sonar pings echoed outward, searching for shadows that might already be watching. The crew moved with quiet precision, their routines drilled to perfection, their eyes sharp with the knowledge that peace and war could trade places in a heartbeat. On the horizon, faint lights marked civilian ships moving along trade routes, unaware of the tension hidden just beyond. To them, the Baltic was calm, but to the men and women on board the USS Bulkeley, it was alive with unseen dangers. Submarines gliding silently below, satellites tracing every move from above, rivals listening in on every transmission. Each patrol brought the same question. Was the ship there to protect peace, guarding the fragile lifelines beneath the sea? Or was it a signal that something far larger was already being prepared? A confrontation no longer whispered about, but planned for. In Moscow, warnings grow louder. In NATO capitals, defenses grow stronger. And between them sails a single American destroyer, steel against the cold waves, carrying the weight of a message the world cannot ignore. The Baltic is quiet tonight, but it is not the silence of safety. It is the silence before history chooses its next move. And the question remains, is the USS Bulkeley the shield that will prevent a new war in Europe, or the spark that will begin it?